Welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast. Today, Giant Talk is joined by Keith Nichol, Planning Director and Co-founder at Flourish Direct Marketing, a specialist CRM agency. Having been a business owner for over 18 years, Keith has a wealth of knowledge around strategic planning, which we'll dig into today. So welcome to Giant Talk, Keith. It's great to have you with us for today's episode. Please can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
My name is Keith Nichol, as I've already been introduced. I'm one of the founders of Flourish. I'm also its planning director. Currently, it's planning director. Just a little bit of background about Flourish. We're an independent digital marketing agency with a particular specialism in customer marketing and customer relationship marketing, or CRM. So we started back in 2004. And today we're based in the UK, and we also have an office in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And in both those offices, we look to develop and manage CRM programs for a range of businesses across a range of sectors. And we support clients with the types of things that CRM needs to be successfully deployed. So that's things like planning and strategic development, data management, technical platform support, campaign management, and of course, comms and creative development. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you. And thank you for clarifying CRM. I just think being in the marketing world, I just assume that everyone gets all of the acronyms and things. So thank you for just explaining that for us. So as Flourish is a CRM agency, having KPIs in place is second nature. Why is this so important?
Well, my background is in direct marketing, and indeed Flourish started life as a direct marketing or a direct response agency 20 odd years ago. Everything that we do and everything we've ever done is rooted in the idea of accountability. So in an ideal scenario, every single penny that our clients spend should be measured in terms of its effectiveness towards the objectives and the potential return on the investment that client's making. But there are other measures that can be deployed and employed. So other ways of determining the success of a project or a piece of work. It's not just revenue. It could be about brand awareness. It could be number of customers. It could be contribution to revenue. So KPIs are obviously providing a really natural and logical framework for that measurement. Whatever that measurement is, KPIs is the way that we can go about it. And it's a great way for an external partner, such as an agency, such as a CRM partner, to assess our contribution to business performance. I think also that different people within different businesses, will invariably have a different take on what's important and what success looks like. So marketing and CRM specifically sit amidst of sort of a whole range of other departments. And they want their metric first. They want to see their metric on the dashboard or on the report at the end of the day. So brand will want some kind of sentiment or net promoter score. The central product teams might want some funnel metrics related to engagement. The e-commerce guys, they're like everybody else, they're really interested in conversion and how much you're actually selling. What KPIs do is they kind of make sure everyone is aligned with and agreed upon the most important metric for the business. So it's a good discipline to have KPIs in place, just so everyone knows what's really important.
Yeah, I think it's good, and like I said, it's important to see and to understand if the business is headed in the right direction. You touched on it there, and you spoke about it when we had a chat before the recording, and that you often work with clients on their external strategy. What are the types of issues or challenges that you see with clients when it comes to their strategy?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think, so yeah, you're right. We work mainly as an agency on external strategies, and they mainly take the form of marketing campaign planning, but it could also be about media and channel planning, or making audience or data selections. Could be about developing insight or research proposals. Whatever we're doing externally, perhaps the major challenge is aligning with the internal strategy. So it's easy to think of an agency partner just pushing stuff out into the world and putting it into customers, making sure it's effective and as profitable as possible. But actually, the big issue isn't just out there, it's back at the base. It's the internal work that needs to be done first. CRM particularly touches on a lot of different departments and teams within an organization. So from marketing to IT, from product teams to legal, compliance, etc. CRM is sort of a thread that runs through all of those teams and all of those departments. So for it to be successful, for successful CRM implementation, you need all those different business functions to be working together as best as possible. So, for example, IT need to know that the data needs to flow from one place to another effectively. Legal must be completely happy that when that data is moving around, it's being used correctly, the right permissions are in place, etc. And the product teams, they need to be around because they've got to sign a lot of stuff off. They've got to sign the ads off, or the emails, or the communication. So everyone's got a part to play. They all need to be involved. So essentially, for CRM, which is an external customer-centric strategy to work, it really, really depends on internal functions playing their part and aligning. So that's really key. Now, the challenge comes is, of course, at CRM, there's those other teams, the internal teams, they look at CRM and they go, well, that's not our bag. That's not what we do. It's not, we don't care. It's not a priority for us that you've got to send an email or a direct mail campaign or whatever channel you're using. Their performance metrics don't reflect CRM's. So they say, hey, that's marketing's responsibility. Let's let them get on with it. It's got nothing to do with us. So if you find that within an organization, that attitude or that behavior, there's a problem. You're going to find it really hard to get CRM off the ground. You're going to find it really hard to develop CRM over the years and really optimize and elevate and slowly transform what CRM can do. So I think the main challenge, back to your original question, the types of issues and challenges we see is in that misalignment, when the internal teams don't see their role in helping people like myself or my CRM client partners deploy effective CRM.
Yeah, and I think, in that situation when you've got that misalignment and, you haven't got that cohesion between departments, it, brings a whole host of issues. You've got teams working in silos. How involved do you get as an agency in terms of helping them align? Or is it a case of letting them know that there's a bit of misalignment? Is there anything that you can do? Is it more of an advisory sort of?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the relationship you've got with the client. In some situations, they invite you in to they're aware that there are challenges in that area, and they'll bring you in. It might be that you also bring in other partners to help you with the facilitation of that process, because it's very much, it's not just about marketing comms, which is the kind of soft, fluffy stuff. It becomes about change management. It becomes about how the culture of an organization works. It becomes how that organization is physically and structured. So we've got something to say about it. Whether or not our words land is a different matter, but it is incredibly important. So aligning those strategies so we get the best external execution is really the $1 million question. That's the real challenge, and it's definitely one that's not easily answered. I mean, I'll have a go at answering it, but it's definitely a doozy.
Yeah, no, of course. And you touched on the change management piece and culture. Bigger pieces there that need looking at before, and it's something that we see with clients that we work with on their OKR implementation. It might be that they have tried OKRs and it hasn't worked, and they think the problem is they can't write OKRs, but actually it comes down to they haven't got the right culture in place in the first place for OKRs to work and to thrive. The teams are not engaged, they're not really talking and working cross-functionally, so there's a whole host of issues there. Just touching on that goal setting framework, do you use a goal setting framework either yourself or with clients to help them sort of achieve strategic alignment, or in your own organisation?
Well, there are some recognised goal setting or OKR frameworks that are there to link objectives and key results. The ones that I will tend to use are the ones that integrate or link it to initiatives. So it's not just about objectives and the key reporting aspect. There's a section in there that's about initiatives, and specifically the initiatives required to deliver those results that could be attached to the OKR development process. So the reason I think that's important is that when you list initiatives, it adds tangibility. So if your objectives are really ambitious, and they should be, there should be a sense of stretch for an organization. What the initiatives do, by listing a bunch of initiatives next to those objectives, you are kind of you're making it actionable. You're providing some specific deliverables that people can look at and go, oh, okay, I can see we're aiming for this thing, and we're going to do it through these actions. So people begin to make it, begin to understand. It becomes real for people. So I think whatever OKR framework you're using, the fact that it includes those initiatives means that it becomes real for people. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. In terms of other tools, I think CRM is often largely incorrectly seen as a technology. So there are certain methods, sort of strategic alignment models, that often have greater empathy with IT and technological processes. Easy for me to say. And specifically how the technology that an organization has or might need to have in the future, how that aligns with business objectives. It is a useful model in some regards because technology is a core component of CRM, but it's certainly not the only framework we'd use, because one thing about those sort of technically based frameworks is that they tend to bypass the other two really important components, which are people and process. So, useful in places, but there are other things that we need to consider to implement CRM. I'm an old marketing hack at the end of the day, and I fall back on some pretty traditional models for planning. There's one that I'll just quickly mention here, which is the planning cycle, which I'm sure people have heard of. The planning cycle, it's devised by a guy called Stephen King, and not the horror author, but the father of account planning back in the 1960s. He came up with the planning cycle as a highly simple and completely logical process that kind of takes OKR. It's very familiar. It just uses different descriptives, ways of describing the process, ways that simple folk like myself can understand a lot easier. So it basically asks 5 questions: where we are, why are we here? And then there are 2 contextual questions. They lay out the landscape for people to understand where a business is, where a company actually is at any one point. The third question is, where could we be? And that's really where the objective part comes in, and laying out the goals. So if we're here, where could we be in the future? The fourth question is, how could we get there? And that's very much about, going back to what I said before, the initiatives, the methodology, the direction and the form of travel that's going to get you towards those objectives. And the last question is, are we getting there? And that's really the reporting metric aspect of it. So 5 questions, really simple, that take you on a little bit of a journey. It's very old fashioned, but I guess like so many things, it's proven, and it really is. It's simple. So people who are, from different parts of an organization have different understanding of what you're trying to do. It's a really good denominator for them. They really understand what you're trying to do when you bring it down to those sorts of 5 simple questions. And
I think just on point 3, I think it was number 3, where could we be? That links in closely to the objective part of looking at your strategy and looking at, what are the big moves? What, can you improve on, or do you need to change, or where do you want to get to into the next sort of 3 to 5 years, maybe, as like longer term goals, and then looking at those over the next year and breaking them up into smaller strategic objectives. And then just touching back on the tangibility part, when you first started, to answer that point, I'm just going back to people and process, more the people side, and for those colleagues in an organisation to understand how it is, how what they do is valuable and links to the overall vision of the business essentially. And I think that really helps move the needle and helps motivate your teams as well. So that's, I think, really important.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the really underestimated function that a business can play is to encourage communication. I think when you use the word alignment between any two strategies, whether they're external or internal, relies on people talking to each other and offering up their ideas. I think that means anyone who's responsible for OKR, anyone who's responsible for an alignment project, means that they have to create situations and forums whereby people and everyone involved in whatever they're doing, in my case, it would be a CRM implementation, but everyone involved in that has that opportunity to share and contribute and really positively influence the process. It's not just one person's responsibility, it is everybody's responsibility to get involved. I think increasingly, we're all getting used to this remote and hybrid way of working. So the people that are involved in this process are going to be very, very different. They're going to be different locations, different time zones, different responsibilities, different priorities, different resources. So OKR is incredibly important because it becomes the common ground on which all of those people can share those ideas and share the direction that the company wants them to travel in. They can all get on that bus together and know where they're all heading. So given the diversity within businesses and diversity of thought and plurality of thought is really important in this process, but you do need something that becomes the focus. And that's why OKRs are really important, because they give everyone this kind of North Star to work towards.
And as you was talking now, I was thinking about the remote work. And I think I read, it was yesterday or the day before, that 50% of I think organisations have now said that they are going to be fully remote, which is huge. It's massive. And like you said, things like goal setting frameworks like OKRs, I think are critical. And I like the analogy of getting everyone on the bus in the same direction. So I won't steal that one. We've touched on it briefly, but what impact do you see with clients that do have clearly aligned strategies? What impact does this have on their business?
That's another great question. I think it's very easy for all those different distinct areas of the business to fall into a very routine and regimented way of thinking. A situation where actions become habitual and decision making more often than not gets made by taking the path of least resistance. Certain things get done in certain ways because it's the way it's always been done, and the individuals working within that situation kind of see no reason or certainly no opportunity to change the status quo. So I think what alignment processes do is they, as I mentioned the word before, they create that thread that runs through different functions within an organization. It kind of provides a guide rail for collaboration and integration of processes and people. So one of the most obvious benefits that alignment brings is a process through which all of those silos and all of that regimented thinking can be broken down. Teams can find new ways to work, and importantly, new ways to work together. And this is the first step towards kind of developing aligned strategies and ultimately aligned KPIs. But as well as about being those dependent sort of elements of a company together, alignment is also a process. And I think this is kind of partly ignored, or it certainly isn't a primary reason. Alignment is also a process through which all those distinct areas of a business can discover or maybe rediscover new ways of thinking about their own discipline, the thing that they do every day. I'll give you an example for CRM. So CRM uses first-party data. So that's data that is collected directly from the customer. Now, we use it to do a number of things. We can use it to reach out to communicate with customers. We can analyze it so we can understand customers better. It can be organized into segments, so the marketing that we do is more effective or more efficient. There's a number of ways we can use first-party data. But first-party data can also be shared with other functions and other people within a business. And it helps them improve what they're doing as well. So an example might be that we share it with the social media team, and they're able to create specific audience selections to be able to target customers in things like Facebook or Instagram. We might be able to give it to our people in research and the insights team, and they can use it to enrich their customer profiles. Or we might give it to the media team and they can look at that customer data and they can build lookalike models. So they go and find more of the same elsewhere and build the customer volume. So I think what's is often forgotten about is alignment. Yeah, it helps everyone work together, but it also gives people the opportunity to do their job better. Alignment is a process that enables others to understand more about the thing that you do and shows them how they might take advantage of that. And I think that's really important, because the benefit then is not the working together. The benefit is the value that I, as a separate business function, can bring to you. And I think that sort of is really important, and it's definitely worth stressing.
Yeah, and I think as well, just to add to that, it definitely helps maintain focus. And touched on this earlier as well, but I think having that clear, aligned strategy for those who are not in leadership, but those further down in the organisation, doing their day-to-day job, knowing how what they do ties to the bigger picture, I think, as another, important benefit of having that alignment.
Absolutely.
And definitely cross-functional working as well is key, as you've said.
It is. I really, and it is something of a paradox to describe alignment as the idea that alignment actually strengthens a business, distinct business areas rather. Obviously it does bring people together, but it also, the idea that it strengthens those separate business functions is something of a paradox. But I guess in my experience, people, giving people the opportunity to do their job better is a real motivating factor. When you talk to them about joining a team or a kind of a working party, or some kind of cooperative that's going to help develop an integrated function within the business, you tend to see heads drop, shoulders drop. You go, oh God, that's just more work. But if you can show them how, by working together, the thing that they do will get better, and that obviously helps their own KPIs, then you get more buy-in, you get more engagement with what you're trying to do. So, it is what's in it for me is the ultimate question, really.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. So finally, can you share some advice for our listeners that might be listening and might be struggling to get strategic alignment, in what they can do in order to create this, or to help as a starting point, what they should be thinking about? It's quite a broad question, I know. Yeah. It's only we haven't got very much longer to talk about. So
exactly, yeah. I think it's really important to remember that alignment is a process, and it's even more important to remember that processes are generally very much maligned, and they're often held responsible for failures within the business. It's the process's fault, and I think that happens because a process, or a bad process particularly, is inanimate. It doesn't exist. It's sort of bad processes. I describe them as orphans within a business, because nobody wants to own them, and nobody kind of wants to do anything about making them better. Nobody wants to take responsibility for them. But it's really important to remember that processes don't exist without people. People are processes. Processes are people. They don't just magically appear out of nowhere. It's people that create them. So as a result, if you've got a bad or misaligned process, it's only people that can change it. Alignment relies on people. And that's where it gets difficult. So you mentioned earlier about, AKR projects failing or not getting the traction that they need to. It's because you're dealing with people, and people are busy. People are tired. People might think or feel they've got something better to do. So in that context, when you throw another new way of working at them, another new initiative, a new set of OKRs or KPIs, those people, irrespective of how good your intentions are probably going to just, as I mentioned before, shrug their shoulders and walk away. They go back to their silo because life's much simpler over there. So I guess for what it's worth, my one piece of advice is before you set out on that alignment journey, the challenge of alignment is, and before you even start thinking about what the OKRs might look like, is aligning the people before you align the process. So make sure you've done all you can, so that the people involved feel, I guess, three things. One is that they trust each other within reason. We don't want to overdo it, but there has to be a level of trust. The second thing is that we need to make sure that they respect the value and the report and the importance of the shared task. So the thing we're going to do together is important, and we all share an understanding of why it's important. And the third thing, and I've mentioned this previously, is make sure they understand what's in it for them. So yes, it's going to help the business and it's going to ladder up to the business goals, but it's also important that it does support their own KPIs. It does make their job more interesting. It does make their work more effective. Now, that might mean in the first place, to achieve those three things, you don't set out on that OKR project. You might find something else that you can do as a group. You might find a different way to bring people together, which is unrelated to that specific alignment task. It might be that you work on a smaller or a different project first, kind of test the water. It might be that there's a social element that you bring into it, or kind of extracurricular activity. It might be that before you engage with that wider or bigger group, you tackle it on a smaller group by group basis. You break people down into smaller groups, and you build that trust and you build that understanding in a more manageable way. Ultimately, although it's time consuming, hopefully, the end will justify the means, or the means will justify the end. I'm not sure which way around it is, but alignment is about building relationships. So it makes sense to use the time that you've got to build a strong foundation, and then so you don't expect too much just from the alignment process itself. Make sure that those relationships are in place.
Mm-hmm. And I think it comes back to what you mentioned at the start around communication, bringing people along and getting them on board, but communicating well with them, especially with people being at, different locations across Zoom. It's not as easy to get people into, the office as you maybe did before in a meeting room. And I think that communication. So if our, changes are to be made, or, things are going to look a little bit different for the better, it's not a shock to people, and they're actually with you along the whole journey. After all, we've mentioned people quite a lot, but they are an organisation's biggest and I think most valuable asset. So let's not leave them behind.
100%. And CRM is a classic example of, so say there's three elements in CRM. There's technology, there's people, and there's process. The one thing we all tend to focus on is technology, because it's expensive, because it takes a lot of commitment, and once it's in the house, in the room, it takes a lot to get rid of it or to change it. But all the way through that, what happens is if you over-empathize on the technology, you forget about people and process, particularly the people. So sometimes, budgeting, resourcing, attention is apportioned in the wrong place. I'm not saying technology isn't important; it's vital, it's essential, but people are the kind of the pivot on which success depends.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Thank you so much, Keith, for joining me today for an episode of Giant Talk. It's been great to talk to you about the work you do at Flourish, and to dig deeper into strategic alignment and the challenges and benefits. It's a good topic that we like talking about a lot at There Be Giants. So thank you for joining me today. And thank you to you, our listeners, for joining another episode of Giant Talk. If you have any feedback or if you would like to get in touch, please email growth@therebegiants.com.